now I'm going to move on to our last but not least, our speaker, Ray Engan. He's connecting to us from California. Ray Engan was a shy little boy who used to avoid talking to strangers by walking inside the safety of his mom's wrap-around skirts. He went on to a career in stand-up comedy, performing with and writing for some of America's best comedians. He left comedy for corporate America and immediately found failure until he added the skill of connecting through comedy to the business world. He became a decorated leader in several large companies and wound up as a sales manager of America's most award-winning small business. Ray has testified before a presidential task force and appeared on MSNBC as the voice of small business in America. Before COVID-19, Ray gave workshops around the country teaching America's business leaders how to create better, happier, more productive workers through humorous storytelling in the workplace. And with his program, Leadership Through Laughter. Today, he goes on Zoom just to hear people say, "George, you're on mute. Unmute yourself." Here's Ray Engan with his speech, Shoebox Billy.
Imagine the unbridled joy of a 6-year-old boy just living his dream. My best friend, Shoebox Billy, stood 4 7/8 feet above the surface of the planet, beaming, holding court from what he called his mansion in the sky. My dad called it a tree fort. My mom called it a disaster waiting to happen. But Shoebox Billy was our neighborhood scientist, a red-headed, freckled-faced, charming genius that could often be heard arguing, if orange is a color, then so, if orange is a flavor, then so should be purple. As he stood above us that day, no one realized that what would happen next would change our lives that day to this day. I heard a crack, a thud, and then an ow. Daryl, Pete, Silent Joey, and I ran over to where Billy was. He was writhing on the ground, flat on his back, but he was angry. He was finger pointing angry, staring up, not at us, but at something much bigger. Joey was finger pointing angry at gravity. And the next words out of his mouth would create neighborhood legend. "I think I can fix that." And then he stuck out his foot. Because in our neighborhood, we didn't high five to let everybody know it was okay. We gave the low toe, the universal sign that everything was right on Apollo Road. Well, there's many kids in this world that think that anything's possible. Billy didn't think that. Billy knew it. And more importantly, Billy went out and proved it. Now, we called him Shoebox Billy because what he would do, he would solve your problems by taking common household items and putting them in a shoebox and then making you fuel it with your belief to make it work. Oh, and these things work. With a shoebox, Billy cleared out that area under Daryl's bed of monsters. With a shoebox, Billy stopped Pete from catching cooties. Miracle. Every kid walked around, just about every kid in the neighborhood had a shoebox. They were a bank for our hopes and dreams. And Billy had the best interest rates in town. Now, surprisingly, the only kid that didn't have a shoebox was Silent Joey. Silent Joey was 5.5 years old, and he hadn't spoken yet. And Pete asked Billy, he said, why haven't you got a shoebox for Silent Joey? He said, Silent Joey does not need a shoebox to speak. He just needs something important to talk about. It wasn't surprising to any of us the day after Billy fell from the tree. He showed up back at the tree holding a shoebox, and he was excited. Ray, this is my best one yet. Look, he opened the lid. Inside the shoebox, there were sponges, rubber bands, and pineapple upside down cake. The sponges float. Rubber bands bounce back. And if the pineapple cake is upside down, the person holding it must be right side up. There's balance in the universe. Spock told us so. And he took the shoebox, he placed it at the bottom of the tree, scampered up it to the exact same spot where he fell the day before, closed his eyes, and jumped. And when he jumped, his left arm reached out and caught a branch. His right arm swung over, caught the next branch. And he wound up circling that tree twice with his eyes closed. He had invented a gravity machine. And that was scientific proof to a 6-year-old. And as a matter of fact, we've never fallen out of another tree ever. Now, after that moment, Billy disappeared. Shortly thereafter, school started. We didn't know where Billy was. Parents said nothing. Kids knew nothing. We heard a teacher, though, who told us that Billy had caught something. And the word I heard what he had caught was a thing called flimphoma. And I remember rushing home going, Mom, what's flimphoma? Billy's caught flimphoma. Mom, what's flimphoma? I was excited because if Billy caught it, it had to be terrific. My mom cried. It was the first time I'd ever seen that. And she did the mom thing where she pulled me in at the same level. And she said, Ray, Billy's going to get really, really skinny and he's going to lose all his hair. And then the doorbell rang and severe knocking on the door, and I jumped up to go get it. Well, it was Daryl, it was Pete, and it was Silent Joey. And Daryl looked confused. Pete was crying. Silent Joey looked angry. And I didn't know what to do. And somehow, something happened we had never witnessed before in our lives. We heard the sound of Silent Joey's voice. I think I can fix this. Get a shoebox. So we grabbed a shoebox and raced off to build Billy's flimphoma-curing, thought-provoking shoebox machine. And the first thing we did, because Daryl's mom always said that the problem with skinny people is they didn't eat enough chocolate. So we threw 16 pieces of chocolate into that shoebox. Well, it was 20 when we started, but you get hungry building these things, right? Next, we had to race off to Barber Bob's. Barber Bob, can you shave our heads and give us back the hair? We are going to create a shoebox curing lymphoma machine. Barber Bob, we all felt his tears on our arms as he shaved our heads that day. But we left with a bag full of hair, completely bald. I had no idea it would be permanent. The last thing we needed, we went to Old Man Perlowitz's place to get a magic rock. We took everything we could and we painted this thing so green that it glowed. We created kryptonite. That could stop Superman. If it stopped Superman, lymphoma didn't have a chance. We had chocolate, we had hair, we had a magic rock made of kryptonite. But more importantly was our belief. The next day we took the shoebox. 5 bubbly, bald-headed boys burst into Billy's hospital room. Yay! There was someone in that hospital bed, but it didn't look like Billy. His face was drawn. His eyes, so full of life, were empty. I didn't know what to do. I froze. But Silent Joey took the shoebox out of my hands, walked up to Billy, and said, "We have built a lymphoma-curing shoebox machine. This is for you. Now you will be well." I guess once we started Joey talking, we couldn't get him to stop, right? Billy took the box and looked confused. He looked inside, and then the corners of his mouth, they started twitching. I was like, "What's wrong with him?" And they twitched a little bit more, and then all of a sudden, it started to turn upward. And the smile grew, and it went in up past his ears and into his eyes. And pretty soon, Billy was beaming just like that day he was standing in the mansion in the sky. But more importantly, from the corner of his hospital bed, outworked his foot to give us the low toe. That was the universal sign everything was okay. The 5 people in that room knew that Billy would be okay. But the doctors disagreed, and they give Billy 6 months to live. And you can't always get what you want. But today's not one of those days, because doctors had to eat crow that day, and they called Billy's recovery a miracle. Billy calls it scientific proof of belief. We gave Billy a shoebox, and he fueled it with his belief to make it happen. He used the power of his belief. That little smile you felt in your heart when you just found out that Billy lived, that was Billy getting in there and put a little belief back in you. Today, Billy makes shoe boxes for anyone that wants them. He owns a shoe store. And when he walks back and he sees the inventory, he doesn't see inventory. He sees stacks and stacks and stacks of hopes and dreams. And if you buy a shoebox with shoes in it from Billy, he probably would ask you 3 questions. He does this quite often. Is there a mansion in your sky that you haven't lived in yet? Are there trees you still want to climb? Is there anything in your life you think you can fix? If so, then what belongs in your shoebox? Figure that out, and life will give you the low toe. Oscar.